In the void of space, where stars collide and galaxies whisper secrets of the old wars, an unspoken rule echoes: never target a human. This galactic decree, as ancient as the star lanes, framed Commander Jaxon Hale's mission as he perched before the sprawling star map. His ship, the Silent Vanguard, drifted silently near the edge of the Orpheus sector, hidden among the ice asteroids. Today, Jackson's steely gaze wasn't on the dangers lurking in the asteroid belt, nor was it on the usual suspects of pirate ambushes or rogue traders. Instead, his focus was fixed on the historical anomalies he'd found in the Galactic Archives, a series of incidents missing from the public records, all involving human targets who miraculously survived attempts on their lives. His fingers traced the hologram's light, stopping over the last known coordinates of an infamous assassination attempt that had failed, mysteriously aborted by the alien hit squad. "Ever wonder why they call us the untouchables, Leo?" Jaxon mused aloud, glancing at his second-in-command, who floated quietly by the navigation panel. Leo, a man of few words, shrugged slightly, a gesture barely perceptible in the low gravity of the command deck. "Maybe they fear what they don't understand, and they don't understand us," he replied, his voice as calm as the starlight. Jaxon chuckled softly, a sound almost lost in the soft whir of the ship's life support systems. "Or perhaps they've felt the wrath of humanity once too many," he added, turning back to the map. His eyes narrowed as he zoomed in on a sector known for its lawlessness, marked by the remnants of a battle where a human fleet had once turned the tide against overwhelming odds. The soft beep of an incoming transmission interrupted his thoughts. Jaxon tapped the console, and the air in front of him shimmered as the message decrypted. "Commander Hale, you are requested at the Galactic Council. It seems they need a human perspective on some recent incidents." Leo raised an eyebrow, his usual stoic demeanor giving way to curiosity. "Council summons don't come lightly. Should I ready the jump drive?" "In a moment," Jaxon said, his mind racing with the implications of the summons. As he prepared to leave, he cast one last glance at the star map, its stars blinking like distant eyes in the dark. He knew this mission might uncover truths that some in the galaxy wished remained hidden, but as the only species in the cosmos never targeted for assassination, it was up to him to find out why and ensure it stayed that way. The engines of the Silent Vanguard hummed to life, a low rumble that resonated through the hull as it prepared to bridge the vast distances of space. Jaxon settled into his command chair, his face set in determination. Whatever secrets awaited them at the Galactic Council, he was ready. After all, in the vast, whispering darkness of space, some truths demand to be heard. As the Silent Vanguard slipped through the cosmic veil, starlight scattered across Jackson's face, illuminating the contemplative sharpness in his eyes. The jump to the Galactic Council was smooth, a testament to the ship's advanced navigation systems and Leo's precise handling. The transition from the solitude of space to the bustling hub of the Council's orbiting station always left Jaxon with a mix of awe and trepidation. The Council station was a marvel of architecture, sprawling like a silver web in the void. Its corridors sang with the echoes of 1,000 species, each contributing their distinct murmur and footfall to the symphony of interstellar diplomacy. The air was thick with the aroma of exotic spices and the tangy trace of ionization from the shields protecting the station from cosmic radiation. "Commander Hale, welcome," greeted Ambassador Threx, his voice smooth and resonant, almost musical. Threx's skin shimmered with a subtle iridescence under the station's ambient lighting, his eyes reflecting a history of cosmic storms weathered and battles negotiated. "Thank you, Ambassador," Jaxon replied, his tone even but firm. "I understand there are new incidents that require our attention?" "Indeed," Threx said as they walked through the corridors. His steps were silent, a contrast to the soft clack of Jackson's boots on the polished metal floor. "There have been several unauthorized entries into human territories, not direct attacks, mind you, but certainly probing actions that we find concerning." Jackson's senses sharpened at the news. The taste of copper filled his mouth, an instinctual reaction to potential conflict. "And what's our read on this? Scouting or something more sinister?" Threx glanced sideways, his antennae twitching in a gesture of unease. "We think it might be a precursor to something larger. Your people need to be on alert." They entered a dimly lit briefing room, where a vast transparent viewport offered a view of the swirling galaxy beyond. Jaxon approached the window, his reflection ghostly against the backdrop of distant suns and swirling nebulae. The cold touch of the glass seemed to seep into his skin, a stark reminder of the isolation that space imposed. "We will be," Jaxon assured him, turning to face the ambassador. "Humanity didn't come this far by ignoring threats." Threx nodded, his expression unreadable. "There's another matter," he added quietly. "A relic has been discovered on the edge of the Terran sector, an artifact of unknown origin predating our current alliances." Interest piqued, Jaxon leaned in. "An artifact? Predating our alliances?" "Yes, it's enigmatic and its purpose unclear, but its symbols, they resemble ancient human script," Threx admitted, his voice a whisper now. Jaxon felt a chill that wasn't due to the cold glass. This revelation tied a knot in his stomach, a mix of fear and fascination. "I'll need to see this artifact." "Of course," Threx agreed. "But be warned, Jaxon, there are those who believe it should have remained buried. Secrets, as you know, can be double-edged swords." As they arranged for the visit, Jackson's thoughts were already racing ahead. The universe, it seemed, was not done unveiling its mysteries to him, nor he in confronting them. Jackson's boots echoed in the desolate chamber where the artifact was kept. The room, carved out of a solitary asteroid, felt like the belly of an ancient beast, cold and forgotten by time itself. The walls, rough and irregular, glistened with moisture that the life support systems couldn't quite reclaim. Ambassador Threx led him to a pedestal in the center, where the artifact rested under a pale blue light. It was smaller than Jaxon had imagined, no larger than a human heart, but its presence was immense, as if it breathed a life of its own. The surface was obsidian black, etched with symbols that flickered in Jackson's peripheral vision, elusive like shadows at dusk. "These symbols," Jaxon began, his voice echoing slightly off the stone walls. "You said they resemble ancient human script?" Threx nodded, his gaze fixed on the artifact. "Yes, and that's what unnerves us. This artifact predates any known human technology by millennia." Jaxon reached out, hesitated, then pulled his hand back. The air around the artifact was cooler, charged with a latent energy that prickled the hairs on his arm. He could taste the sharp tang of iron in the air, a lingering scent of cosmic dust that this chamber had gathered over eons. "What have your experts deciphered?" Jaxon asked, his eyes never leaving the enigmatic object. "Very little," Threx admitted. "It's as if the artifact is reluctant to reveal its secrets. All we know is it's a key of sorts, a device meant to unlock something. Or awaken," Jaxon suggested, a chill threading down his spine. The idea that they stood on the brink of unearthing something monumental was exhilarating, but terrifying too, like standing on the precipice of a black hole where one step too far could pull you into the unknown. Threx's antennae twitched, a sign of agitation. "Yes, that possibility has been considered. The Council is divided. Some believe it should be studied. Others fear what it might unleash." A soft drip of water from the ceiling splattered on the stone floor, its sound a sharp snap in the otherwise oppressive silence. Jaxon watched the ripples expand and fade, like the far-reaching consequences of their next decisions. "We need to proceed carefully," Jaxon finally said, his resolve hardening. "If this artifact is indeed connected to humanity, then it's not just our past at stake, but potentially our future." Threx's eyes met his, reflecting a galaxy's worth of worry. "Will you take responsibility for it?" Jaxon considered the weight of the request. Taking the artifact could mean stepping into a maelstrom not just of politics, but of cosmic proportions. Yet, the pull of the unknown was too strong, a siren call he couldn't ignore. "I will," he affirmed, his voice a low rumble in the crypt-like chamber. Humanity has always faced the unknown head-on, not out of hubris, but out of necessity. If there are answers, we will find them. If there are threats, we will face them. As they prepared to transfer the artifact to the Silent Vanguard, Jaxon felt the weight of history pressing down on him, like the deep sea pressure that could crush or forge, depending on the metal it met. This was no longer just a mission. It was a voyage into the very heart of human legacy. With the artifact securely aboard the Silent Vanguard, Jaxon watched as the cold stars slid by, each a silent sentinel in the dark tapestry of space. The artifact, now encased in a transparent alloy, sat in the ship's secure vault, its surface still shimmering with an almost liquid obsidian sheen. Jaxon felt its presence as a whisper in the back of his mind, a call that was both alien and inexplicably familiar. As the ship cut through the cosmos, Leo maneuvered them back towards human-controlled space, his hands steady on the controls. The faint glow of the dashboard reflected in his focused eyes, casting shadows that flickered across his face with the pulsing of distant quasars. "Commander, the Council has sent a priority message," Leo announced, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. His voice carried a gravity that matched the weight of the stars around them. "On screen," Jaxon replied, turning towards the holographic display that materialized with a soft flare of light. The message was succinct, a stark contrast to the complex emotions Jaxon felt. "Proceed with caution. Eyes of the galaxy are upon you." Jackson's jaw tightened. "Seems we're more of a spectacle than I'd hoped," he muttered, the taste of dissatisfaction bitter on his tongue. Leo nodded, a slight compression of his lips the only sign of his agreement. "It's not just the galaxy watching. I've detected unusual signatures tailing us since we left the Council's space. Seems we've piqued someone's curiosity, or ire." The revelation did not surprise Jaxon, but it coiled a knot of tension in his stomach, nonetheless. The sensation was like the foreboding quiet before a storm, electric and thick with the scent of impending rain. He made his way to the viewing port, his reflection ghostly against the backdrop of a nebula blooming like a silent explosion. "We'll need to tighten security protocols. Can't have unwelcome guests now," Jaxon said, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet of the ship. "I'll adjust our course, throw off any potential tails," Leo replied, already tapping into the navigation system with precise, calculated movements. Jaxon turned back to the vault, watching the artifact through the thick glass. The symbols on its surface seemed to pulse faintly, as if reacting to his gaze. It was a mesmerizing dance of light and shadow, pulling at the edges of his understanding. "We're venturing into deep waters, Leo," Jaxon remarked, the metaphor hanging between them like the distant stars. Leo's response was a nod, his usual reserve a blanket that smothered unnecessary words. "Deep waters or not, we have our orders, and you've never been one to shy away from the depths." "No," Jaxon agreed, a wry smile touching his lips. "And I've found that sometimes it's in the deepest waters that we discover what truly lies beneath." As the Silent Vanguard surged forward, slicing through the cosmic currents, Jaxon felt the pull of destiny tightening around them. Whatever secrets the artifact held, they were now irrevocably entwined with it, caught in a dance as ancient as the universe itself. As the Silent Vanguard emerged from the shadow of a colossal asteroid, a burst of cosmic rays painted the bridge with a spectrum of ethereal colors. Jaxon squinted against the brilliance, the light casting stark contrasts over his rugged features. This part of space, a nebulous frontier rarely traversed by even the most daring explorers, seemed to throb with unseen energies, making the air crackle with anticipation. "Adjusting shields to compensate for the radiation spikes," Leo announced, his voice a calm beacon amidst the growing chaos outside. The ship shuddered softly under the stress, a testament to the harshness of the environment they dared to navigate. Jaxon turned his attention back to the artifact, now pulsating with a more pronounced glow as if resonating with the cosmic storm outside. It was as though the relic shared a forbidden rhythm with the universe, a melody unheard, but deeply felt. "Commander, we're receiving a coded transmission," Leo interrupted, his tone laced with a hint of urgency. It's heavily encrypted, source unknown. Let's hear it, Jaxon responded, stepping closer to the main console. The message, once decrypted, filled the room with a raspy, distorted voice that seemed to crawl under Jaxon's skin. Return what you have taken. You meddle in affairs that transcend your understanding. The voice faded as abruptly as it had appeared, leaving a lingering echo that vibrated through the core of the ship. Jaxon exchanged a glance with Leo, his eyes narrowing in determination. Seems we've caught the attention of someone who knows more about our cargo than we do. Leo's response was a nod, his usual composed self slightly ruffled by the implications of the threat. Should we consider turning back? No, Jaxon replied, the words slicing through the tension like a blade. This only confirms we're on the right track. Increase speed, Leo. Let's see how far this rabbit hole goes. As the silent vanguard accelerated, the stars blurred into streaks of light, a visual symphony of speed and time bending around them. Jaxon could almost taste the metallic tang of the nebulae as they passed, each breath he took filled with the cold scent of the void. In the depths of the ship, the artifact continued its mysterious dance. The symbols began to shift, slowly forming a new pattern that neither Jaxon nor any human had ever documented. It was as if the artifact were composing its own response to the cosmic forces, a silent but potent transformation triggered by their journey. Jaxon felt a chill sweep through him, a primal warning from the edge of his mind. He placed his palm against the cold glass of the vault, watching as his reflection melded with the enigmatic etchings on the artifact. "What secrets do you hold?" he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The artifact remained silent, its glow steady and enigmatic. But in the quiet that followed, Jaxon felt the weight of impending revelations, as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for the right moment to unveil truths too profound for human understanding. The path ahead promised answers, but at what cost? This question hung in the air, as palpable as the chill of space itself, driving the silent vanguard deeper into the unknown. As the silent vanguard surged deeper into uncharted territories, the darkness of space enveloped the ship like a shroud. Jaxon stood at the helm, his eyes locked on the pulsing beacon of the artifact's containment unit. The glow had intensified, casting eerie shadows that danced across the control panels, imbuing the room with a ghostly luminescence. "The radiation levels are spiking again," Leo reported, his voice cutting through the silence. His fingers danced over the controls, adjusting the ship's shielding with deft precision. The protective barriers strengthened, casting a soft, almost imperceptible thrum through the deck beneath their feet. Jaxon nodded, feeling the slight vibration as a comforting reminder of their only barrier against the cosmic forces outside. "Keep an eye on those levels. Any change might give us more clues about what we're dealing with," he instructed, his gaze never leaving the glowing artifact. Suddenly the ship jerked violently, a silent cacophony of alerts flashing across the dashboard. Leo grasped the console to stabilize himself, his eyes narrowing as he analyzed the data streaming in. "We've hit a gravitational anomaly," he announced, his voice steady despite the unexpected turbulence. Jaxon braced against the console, feeling the ship stabilize under Leo's skilled command. Could the artifact be influencing our path? He pondered aloud, the question hanging in the air like the scent of ozone that followed a lightning strike. "It's possible," Leo conceded, scanning the readings. "There's a pattern to these disturbances. They're aligning almost harmoniously with the artifact's emissions." The revelation sent a chill down Jaxon's spine, the cold of the void seeping into his bones. He approached the containment unit, his reflection distorted in the transparent alloy. The artifact seemed to be vibrating, its symbols shimmering with a life of their own, whispering secrets in a language lost to time. "We need to document every fluctuation, every anomaly," Jaxon decided, his resolve hardening. "There's a message here, something it's trying to tell us." Leo nodded, already recording the data. "I'll set up a direct feed to the lab. We'll analyze every variance, see if there's a discernible pattern." As they worked, the taste of metal filled the air, a tangible sign of the stress the ship's hull endured as they navigated through the anomaly. Jaxon couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn deeper into a web, each thread vibrating with the energy of the artifact. Hours passed, the ship steady now, as they moved beyond the anomaly. Jackson's thoughts were a whirlwind, each theory more unsettling than the last. The artifact, silent yet communicative, seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, or perhaps it was the heartbeat of the universe itself. "We're on the verge of something monumental, Leo," Jaxon said finally, his voice low, almost reverent. "This isn't just about human history or alien technology. It's about the fabric of the cosmos, and we're unraveling it thread by thread." Leo met his gaze, the weight of their discovery reflected in his eyes. "And we must be prepared for whatever we find at the end," he added. The ship's course set firmly into the unknown, guided by the mysterious symphony of the artifact. As the stars streaked past, Jaxon felt the destiny of humanity intertwined with the cryptic pulse of their enigmatic guide, each beat a step further into the abyss of knowledge. Navigating through the serpentine twists of the lesser-known star lanes, the silent vanguard cruised into a sector where stars seemed to hide rather than shine, their light dim and distant. This part of space was a silent witness to forgotten cosmic events, its history etched in the cold darkness that surrounded them. Jaxon stood at the observation deck, his eyes tracing the faint outline of a derelict space station that drifted aimlessly. It was an ancient relic, possibly a remnant of a long-lost civilization, its surface scarred by asteroid impacts and the harsh radiation that this lonely part of the galaxy offered. "The station's records could be invaluable," Leo pointed out, his voice echoing softly in the vast emptiness of the deck. His presence was a steady pulse beside Jaxon, never intrusive, but always significant. "Agreed," Jaxon responded, his gaze fixed on the ghostly structure. "Prepare for a docking maneuver. Let's see what secrets it holds." As they approached, the silence of the void was palpable, tasted in the air that grew colder as they neared the station. The smell of decay and dust seeped through the corridors of the Vanguard as they docked, a stark reminder of the station's long abandonment. Inside, the gravity was minimal, a gentle reminder of the station's dormant systems. Their footsteps left impressions on the thick layer of dust, marking the passage of the first visitors in centuries. The walls were lined with panels, their once bright colors now faded to monochrome hues under the dim emergency lighting that still flickered to life sporadically. Jaxon led the way into what appeared to be the control center, a room filled with consoles and holographic displays, frozen in time. He activated his scanner, sweeping it over the consoles. The data here could tell us more about the sector's history, and perhaps about the civilizations that once thrived here. As Leo worked on retrieving the data, Jackson's hand brushed against a control panel, disturbing a layer of cosmic dust. The touch triggered a sequence, and the room bathed in a sudden burst of light as dormant screens flickered to life, revealing star maps, logs, and cryptic symbols that matched the design of their artifact. "Look at this," Leo called out, his tone a mix of awe and urgency. He pointed to a display showing a star system with an annotated diagram that mirrored some of the symbols on the artifact. Jaxon leaned closer, his senses tingling as the connection unfolded before him. "This could be it. The origin system of the artifact," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the low crackle of reactivating systems. The room filled with the scent of ionized air, a sharp reminder of the station's reawakening power. Jaxon felt the weight of their discovery, a burden shared silently between him and Leo as they contemplated the implications. With new data in hand, they returned to the ship, the station receding into the darkness behind them, its secrets partially unlocked. The journey back was quiet, each man lost in thought, pondering the unfolding mystery that now seemed even more intricate. As the silent Vanguard resumed its course, the artifact glowed softly in its containment unit, its light now seeming less ominous and more like a beacon guiding them forward. Jaxon knew they were only scratching the surface of something monumental, the threads of history and destiny intertwined like the star maps they had just uncovered. With the star maps and encrypted logs retrieved from the derelict station now loaded into the Silent Vanguard's database, Jaxon and Leo delved deeper into the mysteries they held. The cabin was filled with the soft glow of screens, casting long shadows that seemed to pulse with the life of the data being unveiled. The symbols we've uncovered aren't just markers or simple identifiers, Leo noted, his fingers gliding over the holographic interface, bringing up comparisons between the artifact's markings and those on the display. They match the star alignments we've been tracking, suggesting a map or a set of directions. Jaxon leaned over the console, his senses heightened as he absorbed the implications. The scent of electricity in the air was sharp, almost tangy, as the ship's processors worked overtime to decode the ancient cipher. If we can follow these alignments, they might lead us directly to the origin of this artifact, he mused, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. As they plotted a course based on the newly uncovered star maps, the ship passed through a nebula, its particles shimmering like dust motes in sunlight. The nebula painted everything with a surreal, almost dreamlike quality, its colors reflecting off the ship's hull and filtering into the cabin through the viewports. "Setting course for the Eridani sector," Leo confirmed, his voice steady despite the surreal surroundings. "It's not well charted, but it corresponds precisely with the highest concentration of matched symbols." The journey through the nebula was silent, save for the soft clicks of the ship's adaptive hull adjusting to the denser areas of cosmic dust and gas. Jaxon felt a chill as the temperature inside the cabin dropped slightly, the ship's life support systems compensating for the external cold of the nebula. "Look at this," Leo suddenly interrupted, zooming in on a particular part of the star map. "This symbol here, it's repeated across several sectors. It could signify a meeting point or a place of importance." Jaxon studied the symbol, a complex arrangement of lines and circles that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Or a warning," he added thoughtfully, the taste of metal now evident on his tongue as tension filled the air. The possibility hung between them, a silent acknowledgement of the risks involved as they ventured into the unknown. Each new revelation seemed to bring more questions than answers, and the deeper they delved, the more enigmatic their path became. As the Silent Vanguard emerged from the nebula, the stars ahead seemed clearer, more vivid. It was as if the nebula had been a veil, and beyond it lay truths long hidden. Jaxon felt the ship accelerate beneath him, the slight vibration of the engines a constant reminder of their journey towards what might be a monumental discovery. "We should be prepared for anything," Jaxon stated, his resolve firm. "This sector might hold the key to understanding the artifact, but it also might hold dangers we haven't anticipated." Leo nodded, his expression serious. "I'll make sure all systems are at optimal efficiency. Whatever lies ahead, we'll face it ready." With the mysterious symbol guiding them, the Silent Vanguard sped forward, cutting through the darkness of space towards a destiny that was intertwined with the very fabric of the cosmos. The anticipation of what they might find was palpable, a mixture of dread and excitement that kept them vigilant and ever watchful. As the Silent Vanguard sailed into the Eridani sector, the cosmos seemed to hold its breath, the usual murmur of distant celestial bodies falling eerily silent. The stars here were sparse, their light hesitant, as if afraid of revealing too much. Jaxon felt this change, the stillness a stark contrast to the vibrant energy of the previous sectors. "The sensors are picking up fluctuating energy patterns," Leo reported, his voice low, almost blending with the soft whisper of the ship's systems, working to recalibrate for the new environmental factors. "It's as though the fabric of space itself is thinner here." Jaxon peered out into the void where the darkness seemed deeper, the blackness almost tangible. He could taste the starkness of the vacuum on his tongue, a metallic tang that matched his growing apprehension. "Visuals are unclear too," Jaxon noted, adjusting the focus on the main viewport. "It's like looking through water. Optical illusions, or something more, you think?" "Possibly both," Leo replied, tapping into the navigation data. "I'm detecting a series of low-density anomalies. Could be natural, could be not." As they ventured deeper, a soft glow began to manifest ahead, a beacon of sorts in the overwhelming darkness. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like the heartbeat of the sector itself. The light was not just visible but palpable, brushing their skin with a faint warmth that contrasted sharply with the surrounding cold. "This must be related to the artifact," Jaxon murmured, feeling a connection in the pulsing light that seemed to echo the rhythm of the mysterious relic aboard their ship. Drawing closer, Leo confirmed, his hands steady despite the unknown nature of the phenomenon. His calm was a grounding force, his presence a quiet reminder of the resilience they both shared. As they approached the source of the light, the silent vanguard began to vibrate gently, a symphony of soft tones resonating through the hull. The sounds were not intrusive but rather harmonious, almost musical, resonating with the core of the ship and its crew. "These vibrations feel alive," Jaxon said, placing his hand against the wall, feeling the vibrations like the purring of a giant cat. "Alive and ancient." "Alive, maybe," Leo agreed, his focus never waning from the readings flashing across his console. "But definitely communicating. It's broadcasting something." Before he could finish, the space around them shimmered, revealing a hidden structure that unfolded like a flower at dawn. It was massive, spanning kilometers across, its architecture so complex and intricate it defied immediate comprehension. "An ancient station? A gateway?" Jaxon speculated, awe coloring his tone. "Or both," Leo added, his usual restraint abandoned in the face of such a discovery. "It's like nothing I've ever seen." They watched in silence as the structure continued to unfold, its surfaces catching the starlight and throwing it back in dazzling patterns. It was not just a structure, but a statement, a testament to a civilization that could manipulate space itself. "Let's find a way inside," Jaxon decided, his curiosity now a tangible force driving them forward. "Whatever secrets it holds, I have a feeling they're meant for us to discover." As the silent vanguard adjusted its course to align with the newly revealed gateway, the sensation of destiny was palpable. They were no longer just explorers or soldiers. They were witnesses to history unfolding, part of a story larger than themselves. Aligning their trajectory with the newly revealed cosmic gateway, Jaxon and Leo prepared to navigate the silent vanguard into what appeared to be the heart of the structure. As they approached, the architecture of the gateway seemed to pulse more intensely, its surfaces shimmering with an ethereal light that cast the entire ship in a ghostly radiance. "This structure is ancient, yet its energy feels alive, almost conscious," Jaxon remarked, his eyes wide with both awe and a trace of trepidation. The air was charged, the typical silence of space replaced by a faint, almost inaudible whisper that seemed to emanate from the walls of the structure itself. "It's like it's breathing," Leo added, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the sanctity of their surroundings. The temperature inside the cabin had dropped slightly, the cold seeping in not just from the void of space, but from the gateway itself, as if it were exhaling a deep cosmic chill. As they moved closer, the patterns of light playing across the gateway's surface began to align, forming a sequence that pulsed rhythmically. "It's responding to us, or maybe to the artifact," Jaxon mused, his fingertips grazing the console, which now vibrated softly under his touch, resonating with the gateway's frequency. Leo monitored the ship's systems, which fluctuated with proximity to the gateway. "All systems are holding, but there's a gravitational pull. It's subtle but increasing. It's drawing us in." The sensation was undeniable. Jaxon could feel the slight tug, not just on the ship but within himself, as if the gateway called to something primal within his very DNA. He watched as the viewscreen displayed the gateway growing larger, its vastness swallowing them into its luminous maw. "Look at this," Leo said, directing Jaxon's attention to a panel that showed a series of complex symbols aligning with those on the artifact. "The alignment is creating a resonance pattern. It's like a key turning in a lock." The gateway's inner lights intensified, revealing a corridor that extended beyond the threshold, its walls lined with more intricate symbols that glowed warmly against the cold metal. The corridor invited them, a path lit across the darkness, leading to mysteries long sealed away. We should prepare for entry, Jaxon decided, his resolve firming. Whatever lies beyond this passage could redefine our understanding of the universe. Are you ready? Leo nodded, his usual composure mingled with an unmistakable flicker of excitement. Ready as we'll ever be. As the silent vanguard crossed the threshold, a symphony of lights enveloped the ship, bathing everything in a brilliant, blinding glow. The cabin was filled with the scent of ozone, sharp and electric, as if the air itself was alive with energy. The ship steadied, and the brilliance faded to a gentle luminescence, revealing the corridor stretching out before them, endless and inviting. Jaxon and Leo stepped forward, their senses heightened to every subtle change, every whisper of sound and shift in the light. "Let's see where this path leads," Jaxon said, a mix of command and wonder in his voice, stepping into the corridor that promised answers and, perhaps, more questions. The journey into the gateway was not just a voyage through space, but through time, each step a dance with the cosmos itself. The corridor stretched ahead, an endless path of shifting luminescence, each step echoing softly as Jaxon and Leo advanced into the unknown. The walls were smooth but bore the faintest indentations, as though countless hands had brushed against them over the course of millennia. A quiet pulse of light traveled along the surface, vanishing into the distance like a signal sent through veins of an ancient, sleeping giant. Jaxon ran his fingers across the nearest marking. It was neither warm nor cold, yet the sensation it left on his skin was electric, a fleeting whisper against his nerves. "This place isn't abandoned," he murmured, the realization crawling under his skin. Leo scanned their surroundings, his expression carved from stone. Then something, or someone, left it waiting. The air carried a charge, the metallic tang of something old, something preserved beyond natural decay. A scent like petrichor after a storm clung to the space, unnatural in a structure sealed away from the elements. Jaxon inhaled deeply, feeling it coil in his lungs, heavy with history. Ahead, the corridor sloped downward, leading into an atrium bathed in soft, shifting colors. The floor was impossibly smooth, reflecting the light above like liquid glass. Floating structures hovered around them, their surfaces etched with unreadable glyphs, slowly rotating in perfect synchrony. There was no sign of life, but the silence did not feel empty. It felt watchful. Jackson's boot barely grazed one of the floor's illuminated panels when a ripple surged outward, activating something unseen. The walls flickered, the floating structures trembled, and a deep vibration pulsed beneath their feet. "Jaxon," Leo said sharply, his fingers tightening around his sidearm. "Something's responding." A column at the center of the chamber came alive, stretching upward like a monolith stirred from slumber. Symbols twisted across its surface, rearranging, aligning until they formed something recognizable. "That's human script," Jaxon breathed, stepping closer. His pulse quickened as his eyes scanned the phrase carved into the impossible structure. "You were never meant to return." The words struck like a hammer, reverberating in the cavernous space, carrying an unspoken warning wrapped in cold finality. Leo exhaled, his body rigid with tension. "That's not exactly welcoming." Jaxon touched the edge of the monolith, his breath shallow. "No, it's not. But someone, something, knew we'd come, and they made sure we'd understand this message." The chamber darkened as the floating structures shifted position, aligning like sentinels preparing for judgment. A distant sound, low, resonant, almost like an intake of breath, rippled through the walls. Leo's grip tightened on his weapon. "Jaxon, we might not be alone." Jaxon kept his eyes on the monolith, its warning carved in eternity. Every fiber in his being screamed that they were standing on the threshold of something vast and deliberate, something meant to remain buried. And yet the door ahead was still open, waiting, daring them to step through. Jaxon stood motionless, his breath shallow, eyes fixed on the monolith's warning. The weight of the message pressed against his chest, heavy as the silence thickening around them. The floating structures continued their slow, deliberate rotations, their shifting patterns casting distorted reflections across the floor. Behind him, Leo remained tense, his stance balanced between readiness and restraint. "If this was meant to keep us out," he murmured, scanning the chamber, "why leave the door open?" Jaxon exhaled slowly, forcing the tension from his shoulders. "Because it's not a warning," he said, voice low. "It's an expectation." He stepped forward, fingers grazing the ancient pillar. The surface, though metallic, felt strange, like something organic had been fused with machinery long before humanity had a name for such things. A subtle tremor ran beneath his touch, sending a sensation like static through his fingertips. The chamber darkened further, as though the air itself thickened. The monolith's script flickered, shifting into a series of overlapping symbols, some recognizable, others utterly alien. A sequence of images followed, projected onto the walls in threads of golden light. A planet, scarred and broken. A fleet of ships, fleeing a battle against unseen forces. A colossal structure, one identical to the gateway they had entered. Leo moved closer, watching the shifting images with narrowed eyes. That gateway, it's not the only one. Jaxon's stomach tightened. Number, and I don't think we were the first to stand here. A new symbol burned into the monolith's surface, brighter than the others. It resembled a spiral, curling inward like a vortex. A word formed in his mind, unbidden, as though something unseen had placed it there. Containment. The realization struck him like a blow. This isn't a beacon. It's a prison. Leo stiffened. Then who, or what, is being contained? The room trembled, not violently, but enough to send a sharp awareness through both men. The floating structures halted their slow rotations, aligning in perfect symmetry. The walls pulsed with rhythmic waves of light, as if something unseen had just awakened. Jaxon reached for his sidearm. "I think we just triggered something." A sound reverberated through the corridor ahead. Not mechanical, not artificial. Something deeper, layered, like a voice speaking from the marrow of the universe itself. A whisper without words. A summons without a choice. The floor beneath them flickered, lines of gold snaking outward, tracing patterns that led toward a sealed passageway. It was an invitation, or a test. Leo exhaled sharply, his expression unreadable. "We should leave." Jaxon knew he was right. Every instinct told him to step back, to retreat. And yet, he couldn't. He had come too far, seen too much. The monolith pulsed again, the script shifting once more. Enter, or be found. Jaxon set his jaw. Whatever lay ahead wasn't waiting for them to decide. It was already aware of their presence, and it was watching. Jaxon scanned the corridor ahead, his mind already calculating contingencies. The golden lines on the floor pulsed in intervals, leading toward the sealed passageway like a heartbeat counting down to an inevitable confrontation. The monolith's final warning lingered in his mind. Enter, or be found. There was no retreat. The only way out was forward. Leo adjusted his sidearm, his stance shifting subtly, preparing for an unseen threat. "If this place was built for containment, we need to assume two things," he murmured. "One, there's something inside that shouldn't get out. Two, whoever built this might not have left it unguarded." Jaxon nodded, already forming a strategy. "We don't know what's waiting on the other side of that door, but we need controlled movement. No rushing in blind." Leo crouched near the floor, running his scanner along the shifting patterns. "These pulses aren't random. It's a time sequence. If we sync our steps with the intervals, we minimize the risk of triggering anything prematurely." Jaxon watched the rhythm, counting the beats in his head. He keyed into his wrist console, activating an overlay that mapped the pulses in real time. "We move when the surge is weakest, slow and precise." Leo checked his gear. "Weapons free or restricted?" "Non-lethal first," Jaxon decided. "If this is a security system, we might still be able to manipulate it rather than force our way through." Leo gave a curt nod. "And if manipulation fails? Then we escalate." Jaxon tapped the containment unit on his belt. Inside was a portable EMP charge, not designed for destruction but for disruption. This should buy us a window if things turn south. The passageway groaned as the floor illuminated fully, the shifting symbols aligning into a single directive. The doorway ahead parted slightly, revealing a chamber bathed in dim, oscillating light. A low vibration resonated through the ground, sending a static charge up Jaxon's boots. They stepped inside, keeping their movement deliberate. The air was thick with something neither organic nor artificial, a charged presence, unseen but tangible. The walls were lined with towering structures resembling containment cells, though their interiors were concealed by layers of mist-like energy. Jaxon crouched near one of the nearest panels, running his scanner across it. "This structure is rerouting power as we move," he noted, watching the energy signatures shift in real time. "It's not just responding to us, it's recalibrating." Leo's grip on his weapon tightened. Meaning it's learning. Jaxon exhaled slowly, pulse steady despite the implications. "We need to stay unpredictable." A new sound cut through the silence. Something moving in the depths of the chamber, its presence just beyond the shifting mist. A shape, blurred but unmistakably large, shifted against the containment field. Leo positioned himself at Jaxon's side. "Whatever's behind that wall, it knows we're here." Jaxon keyed his wrist console, activating a controlled energy surge. "Then let's see if we can turn this place against itself before it decides to do the same to us." Jaxon's pulse remained steady as he monitored the shifting energy fields. The containment chamber wasn't just a prison, it was an adaptive system, recalibrating in real time. Whatever lay beyond the mist had survived here for a reason. Now it was aware of them. Leo kept his stance measured, his weapon trained at the thick barrier of swirling energy. "We need a controlled breach," he murmured. "Something that lets us see what we're dealing with without collapsing the entire system." Jaxon activated his wrist console, analyzing the containment patterns. "If we overload one section of the grid, the system will compensate by rerouting power. We create an artificial weak point, something that looks like a malfunction instead of an attack." Leo studied the data stream. "That gives us seconds, maybe less, before the system corrects itself." Jaxon nodded, already adjusting the parameters. "That's all we need." He reached into his utility belt and withdrew a disruption charge, small but precise. "I'll set this along the edge of the paneling. When triggered, it'll force a controlled energy drop." Leo scanned the chamber. "And if that thing behind the field is hostile, then we make sure it doesn't have time to act." Jaxon repositioned himself, his steps silent as he approached the nearest control node. "Set up a secondary pulse emitter. If this goes wrong, we shut everything down in one move." Leo moved without hesitation, attaching the emitter to a junction point. The structure groaned in protest, as if sensing the interference. The mist churned, thickening in places, distorting whatever waited beyond. Jaxon worked quickly, planting the charge at the weakest intersection of the containment field. His fingers moved with precision, syncing the timing with Leo's backup surge. The air tasted metallic, charged with energy displacement, each breath carrying the weight of anticipation. "Ready?" Jaxon whispered. Leo's voice was tight. "Triggering in 3. The countdown was silent. Jaxon braced, the charge activated. A high-frequency crackle filled the chamber as the containment barrier flickered, its intricate lattice breaking apart in a single controlled moment. The mist swirled violently, dissipating in streaks of light. For a fraction of a second, Jaxon saw it. A form, massive yet eerily fluid, coiled within the remnants of the field. Its surface was neither flesh nor metal, shifting between both states as if refusing to settle. Its limbs, if they could be called that, extended unnaturally, reacting to the sudden disruption. And its eyes, voids cut from the very fabric of darkness, fixed directly on Jaxon. Then the system reasserted itself. The field surged back online, sealing the entity behind its shifting barrier. The mist coalesced once more, obscuring the creature, but not before Jaxon had seen the last flicker of movement. It had smiled. Jaxon exhaled sharply, his mind racing. "We need to move." Leo disengaged the pulse emitter. "That thing saw us." "No," Jaxon corrected, stepping back toward the corridor. "It recognized us." The chamber rumbled again. This time it wasn't from their interference. Something else had changed. The chamber trembled, the pulse of energy shifting in erratic waves as if the entire structure had just registered a fundamental change. Jaxon and Leo locked eyes. That thing, whatever it was, had recognized them, not just as intruders, as something it had been waiting for. Jaxon moved first, his boots pressing into the ground with deliberate force. "We need to leave, now." Leo fell into step beside him, his grip tightening around his weapon. Leaving might not be enough. The mist churned behind them, slow at first, then rippling outward in synchronized waves. The entity remained obscured, but its presence pressed against the containment barrier like a breath against glass. It wasn't trying to break free. It was watching. Jackson's mind raced through every possibility. Containment structures didn't hold nothing. Something had put it here, something powerful enough to lock it away and smart enough to know that if it ever got out, it would be the end of something. Leo's voice was low, sharp. "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me this isn't what I think it is." Jackson's jaw clenched. He couldn't. He turned toward the console, fingers flying over the interface, searching through the decrypted data. Every symbol, every fragmented phrase, the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't a prison. It was a warning label. He exhaled, cold dread settling into his bones. They didn't trap it here. They marked this place so no one would ever come close, so no one would be stupid enough to wake it up. Leo stared at the barrier, where the last visible glimpse of the entity's shifting form had been. Then why aren't the others here, the ones who built this? His voice lowered further. Why didn't they stay to guard it? Jackson's stomach twisted, because they weren't here anymore, because whatever was behind that field had learned, had waited. And now it knew humans had found it. The containment field flared, just once, a flicker so brief it could have been ignored. But Jaxon knew better. The construct was testing itself, adapting to their presence, measuring whether the cage that held it was still enough. "We need to shut this place down," Jaxon said, his voice like stone. "Whatever this thing is, it was locked away for a reason." Leo didn't hesitate. "How?" Jaxon calculated their options, his mind moving faster than instinct. "We overload the structure, not just the containment grid, the entire power relay. If we force it into a fail-safe reset, the system will lock everything down." Leo exhaled sharply. "And if it doesn't?" Jaxon met his gaze. "Then we make sure it never gets the chance to leave." A low vibration passed through the walls, followed by a sound, deep, layered, almost amused. The entity wasn't just watching, it was listening. Jaxon pressed the override sequence. "Let's teach it what happens when humans aren't afraid." Jackson's fingers flew across the interface, overriding the system's fail-safe protocols. The chamber trembled, the air growing heavier, charged with raw energy as the facility's core groaned under the forced cascade. The containment field pulsed erratically, its glow faltering for the first time. The thing inside laughed. Not a sound in the traditional sense. No vocal cords, no exhalation. But the pressure in the air shifted, an unspoken amusement pressing into their bones, like hands gripping a spine just to feel it crack. Leo's jaw tightened. "It knows what we're doing." Jaxon didn't stop. "Good." The sequence hit its final stage. A sharp, guttural vibration rattled through the chamber as deep within the facility, the overload began. Power rerouted, circuits burned out, and containment protocols surged into a catastrophic feedback loop. The walls shuddered. Something beyond them howled, not in pain, but in acknowledgement. Jaxon met Leo's gaze. "We need to move." They sprinted toward the exit as the chamber descended into chaos. The once perfect geometry of the structures warped, the mist curling like dying embers as the facility collapsed in on itself. The containment field surged one last time, its light flaring like a dying sun. Then the voice returned. "You believe you are different. that you are safe. It wasn't speaking in words, it was speaking in certainty. Jaxon didn't look back. Shut it down. Leo pressed the final override, sealing the main doors behind them. The collapse finished with a deafening implosion, the force reverberating through the corridor as if space itself had clenched its fist around the structure. The power flickered once, twice. Then the entire installation went dark. Silence. Jaxon stood at the entrance, chest rising with each measured breath, listening for anything, any trace of that presence still reaching for them. Nothing. Leo exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. "Tell me it's over." Jaxon stared at the blackened ruins. The prison held. Whatever it wasn't getting out. Not today. But he didn't lie to Leo. Didn't say they had won. Instead, he turned toward the docking bay, where the silent vanguard waited. "Let's go." As they launched back into open space, the stars stretched before them, silent witnesses to a war that had never truly ended. Jaxon watched the dark sector shrink behind them, swallowed by the void, his fingers tightening into a fist. Leo watched him carefully. "You think it'll happen again?" Jackson's lips barely moved. "I think it never stopped." Because he knew the truth now. Knew why no alien assassin had ever come for a human. It wasn't because they feared retribution. It was because something else had already marked humanity, had already claimed them, and whatever was locked away in that prison, whatever had been waiting, it recognized them. Jaxon turned his gaze back to the endless void ahead, the weight of the unknown settling in his chest. Why only humans are safe from alien assassins? Maybe it wasn't fear keeping them away. Maybe it was ownership.